Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the Azure networking. In this topic, we will understand the fundamental of Azure networking, and in next topic, it will be a series of Azure networking, and we will step by step learn all the Azure networking in this session. So welcome in Study with Money session, and today the topic is Azure networking. Now, what is Azure? What is networking first before going to start with the virtual network? So networking is a communication channel via that in in a particular when the group of resources wants to communicate to each other, there should be some communication bridge, and that bridge where one resources wants to talk to another resources, that is using one network, and that is called the network. And when we have a not only couple of resources and all the resources methodically wants to communicate to each other, that network is called the virtual network. So as you know that it is a logical isolation of Azure cloud and dedicated to your subscription. So every subscription have a dedicated IPs, dedicated IP address ranges, and that is only for that specific subscription. And it is a logical isolation, means it is working under the boundaries. So if whatever the inside the network range, all the resources are communicating to each other securely. So you can see that here the resources are like a two virtual machines are there. One is SQL Server, and this entire virtual network, Azure Virtual Network, they are communicating to each other. And with this way, it is securely communicating and passing the information. So that's the reason virtual network. And the name is virtual network means actually we are virtualizing the network. So that's a trend is there, that so we are not using the network, we are actually virtualizing, means the everything is in a virtual format. So it looks like, but definitely it is somewhere it is connecting. So we are doing via portal, but somewhere it is connecting. Yeah, and via software it is doing. So that's why it is a virtual network. So now we try to understand what is virtual network. So virtual network, as we know that it is a isolation. It is a isolation. It is a it is a it is a logical isolation. So if we know that here it is a this logical isolation have some address, and in this address this uh, entire entire resources will lie here. So you know that you can think in this way that if this is our one layout, like where the many different buildings are there. So in one layout have a multiple buildings. So, and this particular layout have a some address, and inside that there are multiple buildings are there. So in this address range, it is always not giving you one particular IP, it will give you the range. And in this range, they have many IP addresses are available. So how many IPs are available? You can use this formula 2 to the power 32 minus n. So n is like a 16, means 2 to the power 32 minus 16 means 65,000 IPs are for this particular logical isolation group. And in this 65,000, we will give some IP ranges to this particular subnet range. This is called the one of group. We are giving IP address, and in this particular group have a couple of resources will available. Similarly, in this particular group, which is called the subnet B, have a slash 28 means 32 minus 18 means 16 IP ranges are available. So this is the way how we are defining the different group, and that groups are called as a subnet, and subnet inside the subnet many resources are lying. So every subnet have a 5 IP address reserved. Why 5 IPs are reserved? Like for example, 256 IP address for this particular subnet means 256 minus 5 means 251 IP address only that inside the resources can use, but 5 IP address is reserved for the Azure purpose. So Azure always keep the 5 IP address for their own purpose. First is network address, for which network address this particular, whatever the network it is, it's belong to which particular network address. So this network address have a two information. One is network ID, another is host ID. Host ID is for that device ID. So we'll see in the next topic. Uh, uh, and the gateway. So every subnet have a gateway. Via gateway it connect to the router, because via that it is passing the information. So every subnet have a second IP address is a gateway IP address, and that gateway IP address it passing the data or net packets to the router, and via router it passes to the another network. So that's the way how gateway is working. So DNS is the, like, if our subnet have any IP address, if any domain is using it, that IP address belongs to that private IP belong to that DNS, and that DNS is providing by the some DNS provider. So the fourth IP address is reserved for that DNS provider, and the last IP address is the for the broadcast. So broadcast means if whatever the resources are lying, via that IP it broadcasts to all the information, broadcast to all the resources. So that IP is responsible for broadcasting the information inside the resources. So I hope you understand that why the Azure reserved for 5 IP address in from every subnet. Okay, now we need to understand whenever the any resources are connected with the router. This is our router. Router is helping to provide the IP addresses, private IP addresses to all the all the devices which is inside, and they are connected to a router. Router means via that actually internet is providing. So it is providing whenever it connect, it provide IP address to the different resources. So and it have a gateway. So if suppose this wants to talk to this device, for example, so it will pass the information here via router, it will goes to here. So nobody can directly communicate to each other. So every all the resources will connect via that only. Yeah. So now we need to go for the another more detail, like how the network ID is there. For example, network ID is 192.68.123.32. The first three will reserve for network ID, and last one is for the host. That device ID is there. So that is called the network ID. Default gateway, where the data passes, data packets pass, data packets or packets passes to gateway, and via router it goes to the different. So that is the default gateway. DNS IP is if any domain name is used, any subnet. So that also uses some IP reserved IP address, and that is the DNS IP, and whatever the DNS provider is providing that DNS, that IP is reserved for that particular DNS provider only. And the broadcast IP, we know that when resources, when whatever the in the subnet, this broadcast IP passes the information to all the resources which is inside the subnet. So that is the broadcast IP. And subnet have, as I told you, 5 IPs are reserved for every subnet. So I hope you enjoyed today's basic fundamental Azure networking. And next session we will discuss more in-depth discussion about the Azure networking, different topics we will use it, and again, and some topics we will go via more practical. But before that, at least some theoretical knowledge we should have. Then we will go some practical information. Thank you to everyone, and welcome for and I am appreciating you are giving time is with in study with Manish session. Thank you to everyone.